good afternoon. My name is Don Taylor, and welcome to the Middle Grades Collaborative Conversations. These are monthly conversations with middle level educators where we discuss various topics and events happening in the middle level classroom. This work is supported by the Middle Grades Collaborative and Up for Learning and the Tarrant Institute for Innovative Education. Again, I want to welcome everybody. And today's topic is about what it's like teaching in our fourth year. I don't know if we can consider it post-pandemic, but most of us have been teaching through a pandemic, and now we're in our fourth year, and it's become a little bit more difficult to characterize what that year is shaping up to be and what folks are seeing in their classroom and in their learning communities. So some of the questions will be, how have schools responded to issues related to the pandemic? We know that there's still ongoing issues with students, with teachers in the community. Have student behaviors changed? And what have been some of the challenges and successes observed by folks in the field? We are going to record this, and the recording will be posted on the Middle Grades Collaborative YouTube. I deeply appreciate everybody showing up and spending some time talking about this. We've mentioned many times that for some of us, this has been almost a support group through the pandemic. So again, welcome. My name is Don Taylor. I teach sustainability at Main Street Middle School in Montpelier to 5th through 8th graders. And I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, and we're just going to do it in popcorn style. So I'm going to hand off to Dr. Monica McInerney. You want to introduce yourself? That'd be awesome.
Sure. Hi. Oh, it's so nice to be back here at the Middle Grades Conversation. So I'm Monica McInerney. I'm an associate professor of education at Castleton. And I'm in the midst of a course called Reculturing for future and current educational leaders. And so I'm really pleased as punch to see a number of our participants here today who are thinking about how to bring positive change to their school environments. And I have been a member of the Middle Grades Collaborative myself for many, many years, was a former middle grades teacher as well. So it's just thank you for having these for us, Don. Thanks. And I'm going to pass it on to one of my folks here. So Ann Gardner, over to you.
Hello. So I'm the curriculum coordinator and recovery coordinator for Two Rivers Supervisory Union. I took this job when it was only curriculum, about 2 weeks before we were shut out of school, right at the start of the pandemic. And so that was a challenge. And I think that we're certainly seeing some climate shifts in schools, some of it for the positive and some of it still really struggling. And we are very definitely not through it. We still regularly have classrooms that shut down just because there's nobody to come. So still in struggle.
So I think, my focus.
And do you want to pass it to somebody?
Sure. Hi, Joe. How about you?
Hi, I'm Joe Rivers. I'm from Brattleboro Area Middle School and been part of the collaborative for many years.
Do you want to pass it to somebody, Joe?
Yeah. Mike.
Hi, Mike Lamar. I am currently a 5th grade teacher at the Wade River Valley School, and I live in Barrie, so near where you teach, Don.
All right.
I'll pass on to Melissa.
Hi, I'm Melissa Sargent Minor, consulting special educator with the Vermont Virtual Learning Cooperative, completely online K through 12 program. We are not our own existing school in the state of Vermont, and I'm the liaison between sending schools, LEAs, exceptional learners, families, online educators. And as I've already shared with Don, I did get pulled into an IEP meeting that is not going as well as one would want it to go. So I'm going to be dual screening and turning my camera off for a bit until I can get everybody back on track, because we have some unpleasantness on the other screen. I'm going to pass this on to Kevin, please.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kevin Peely Hunt. I'm a 5'8" journalist on Swift House at Williston Central School. I will send it over to Katie.
Hey there, everybody. I'm Katie Farber. I'm assistant professor at St. Michael's College and was a middle school teacher for a long time. And right now working with pre-service teachers in the area of equity and doing a lot of research around the impact of the pandemic on teachers and teacher sustainability. So really interested in this topic. Thank you. Oh yeah, let's see. How about Shane?
Shane Oakes, I'm the coordinator of student support at the White River Valley High School. Handle a lot of the behavior discipline problems, but I think my focus and the part I love is really working on building positive, strong cultures in school. And I think the better job I do at that, the less discipline work we have. So really excited to be a part of this. Adam, I believe you're the last one.
Christy as well, right? Go ahead, Adam.
I'll pass to Christy right after me, obviously. But I'm Adam Carmichael. I'm a math teacher at Mount Anthony Union High School in Bennington, Vermont. And I've had a little bit of an interesting professional path that I think might be applicable to our conversation. So I was a math teacher here at the high school for several years, and up until when COVID hit in March 2020, and finished that school year under those circumstances, and then was moved to our middle school for our first year back at COVID to address a staffing emergency. So taught like the first two COVID, let's call them the COVID years, at the middle school. So got some experience at the middle levels there, but just a COVID experience. Now I'm back at the high school and having the experience of seeing my students from the middle school now back up at this level. So, Christy.
Thank you, Adam. Christy Howell. I work for the nonprofit Up for Learning. Before working at Up, I was a middle school English teacher, middle and high school English teacher for many years. And at Up, we do youth adult partnership in schools, working on all sorts of things, youth leadership, restorative practice, wellness, sustainability. Yeah, and currently working mostly in the Burlington area with Hunt Middle School, Burlington High School, and up around Colchester, Milton. So a lot of programs going on at Up right now.
All right, thank you so much, everybody. I've put I think this is an speaking order in the chat so that we can be a little bit organized here. We have enough people that we actually could do breakout rooms, but I think that it'd be nice to hear what everybody is saying. And Shane brought up an interesting term. He talked about building school culture. And we also, Katie mentioned this idea of how teachers are going through sort of the pandemic years, as Adam mentioned. And then last year, I'm calling, it was supposed to be our return to normal. And then this year, it's been very difficult to categorize. But I want to go back to what Shane said about this idea of culture and building culture. And I want to ask folks in your learning community, what are some of the impacts or some of the things that you're still seeing that you think have come out of the pandemic? And what are the things that you may see are improving or have changed? And by that, I mean, you know, last year was something happening one way and now it's happening another way. Are you seeing a return to pre-pandemic practices? And so really this question I'd like to focus on what you're seeing in your students and maybe what you are attributing that to. And I'll start with an example. For me, we'd spent so much time online during the pandemic that I think kids have started using technology in ways that we didn't expect and that are undermining perhaps what we want to do or we want to achieve. And so one of the things that I'm seeing coming out of the pandemic is a real challenge to this idea of one-on-one computing and using technology for innovative ways. And I'm thinking about or considering how to address that in my classroom through my curriculum, my activities, and what I'm asking students to engage with. So that would be just an example of something I'm seeing. I'm going to pass it over to Kevin and take it away.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief. I'm on a 5-8 team. So we have the spectrum from fifth through 8th grade. And one thing we're noticing more of their 7th and 8th graders, and I've heard this from many teachers, is it just seems like kids forgot how to be kids and like just like how to socialize with each other, how to treat each other with respect and have some level of empathy. And again, I think they missed some crucial years of socialization, and I think just the ways people coped in different means during the pandemic has had some aftermath for sure. One thing I'm hopeful for is I think as a school, we've been putting a lot of stock into SEL and thinking about ways of using restorative circles and whatnot, just kind of bringing the community together and really focusing in on that for like every single team in our building. So we've been doing some good PD work around that. So I'm hoping to keep working through those troubles and getting kids, back to really caring about each other. All right, over to Ann.
I'm trying to unmute there. So I work with 4 different elementary schools and a middle high school. And particularly at the middle high school, when we became remote and we only closed for 1 full week during the pandemic, and that was when we had teachers who went somewhere over Thanksgiving and then came back and everybody had to quarantine. So we were open throughout the whole process. But one of the things we discovered is there's students who really thrived during that time, which was not necessarily what we expected. And that was particularly true of people who needed some quiet and some space. And they're now returning into a kind of sort of the pre-pandemic expectation. And some of them are making that transition really well. And some of them are still really struggling. So that's something that we're certainly aware of. In terms of the adults, in many ways, they've had exactly the same needs, that they need to reculture back into this, and that we're using the time to really examine the instructional practices that we have and what's serving us and what's serving our students and what isn't. And doing a lot of work around restorative practice, including finally getting rid of our chieftain's mascot, who's been it should not have been there to begin with, much less still be having a discussion for. So certainly there's a lot of restorative work that's going on, and there are times when that needs to take precedence over academics. That how we belong in the world and how we move in the world is more important.
Hi, I'm going to pass right now. My students are coming back to plug in their Chromebooks at the end of the day. And so maybe at the end, I'll have some time.
We get that, Joe. Thank you. Thank you. I have kind of a different perspective because I'm not in the classroom with kids, but I do have the privilege of working with folks who are. But I will say, I want to talk for a minute about my first year students who are undergrads, who are basically in their 13th year of school, so right out of high school. It's been really interesting to work with them. They appear to be more reticent and quiet. And it's interesting what Ann just said about them having come from a quiet space out into the big world again. And so I'm just curious about their shyness, their confidence in talking with other people and asking for help. So that's just something that I'm really aware of right now with a lot of my first year students, my connections group that has just come out of high school and into the college space. Yeah. So Shane?
Yeah, I think one thing that I've noticed and really appreciate, and am hopeful that it continues to drive improvement in our school is such a deeper level of compassion, understanding, and willingness to just by teachers to meet students where they're at. And we had a great PD in service to start the year off with Joelle Van Lent, and kind of she shared that what folks are seeing across the field is really a 2-year lag in social emotional learning skills. So if we think of our freshmen coming in as really 7th graders in a high school environment, and so it's really great to work in a smaller school with a bunch of caring, compassionate teachers that are just trying to figure this out with students. And so that feels good, even though it's still hard, and there's certainly been setbacks or challenges because of the pandemic. I do feel like we have a strong culture of trying to support and work through this.
I'm going to piggyback on that, Shane. I was thinking the same thing. I saw when I was teaching 5th grade last year, a lot more in the year before, a lot more grace and flexibility that everyone was able to offer around people's social emotional, what was happening for them. And I just don't want that to fade. And I'm getting the sense that some of that is fading, and we're getting back to some of those really inflexible structures. And it reminds me of when we had that pod model, and a lot of schools had that, where you had 2 adults and you had the smaller group of students that they were like eating lunch and having recess together. And some kids reported that the kids were able to eat the lunches for the first time because it was calm in the environment. They were able to access some of the playground that didn't feel overwhelming. And so there's these pieces that I wish we would bring through that is just so easy to snap back from. And then for my 5th graders, I noticed that, of course, they lost the opportunity to collaborate, and they really needed a lot of scaffolding and support around what does it look like to work on a team and a project and really build the collaboration, transferable skills. Yeah, I'm just thinking that a lot of our students had more agency at this time when they were able to dictate when and how they did their work. And so there's like a little bit of a loss of that agency because now they're back in person and everybody's controlling their time, whereas before they were a little more in charge. And so I think that, Anne, your comments made me think of that too. Let's see. On to
Yeah, that was a good segue, because I'm just going to start by piggybacking off of one of the last things you said there, Katie. So at least at the high school level, that need in the students to have their own agency, seeing it present itself sometimes like in a negative way of it for a certain population of our students, our daily schedule and our bells throughout the day and seem to be taken as more of suggestions than really where students need to be. So we have lots of students wandering around at their own leisure and coming to classes late and things like that. And so a lot of our focus, rather than on like punitive discipline in these scenarios, because we're realizing that it's really not going to have an effect, has been what other people have said, trying to change our culture through like restorative work and just building community in our classroom and in our school to try to foster like that positive culture and some of that sort of like shared accountability, and reteach this to kids who again lost it from the isolation that the pandemic created, and just relearning how to be part of a community and what that means, and that your actions do affect others. They're not just, on you, because you're not just sitting at home in your room anymore. And then something that has made that difficult, and I think it's been touched upon already, is this reliance on technology that students have, and it's really difficult to to break them away from screens. And they seem more comfortable communicating through technology and through screens than face to face. Even to just use simplistic terms to keep it easy, like if we talk about the good students, right? Even though they're academically motivated and they want to do their best, I have many students who are more comfortable sending me emails or communicating through Google Classroom than coming to approach me in person to get help. And once that's initiated, I'll bring it back to in-person conversations, and we do well that way. But they have trouble initiating anything in person. They have a lot of anxiety about walking up to anybody, whether it's an adult or another student, and asking for help or even sharing successes or failures or anything like that. And then all that is like really crucial, especially at the high school level as we're preparing them to, go on to be adults and then out into the community. And so that's a lot of what we're focusing on now, is how to cultivate that again.
I'd love to hop on board after Adam if he's completed. I'm going to just name the elephant in the room, being the virtual teacher here, and all of our students are communicating with their educators. I think you bring up such a valid point, Adam, in regards to meeting students where they're at, that initiation. From my perspective, and again, I'm going K-12. When I'm just came off a meeting, 3rd grade, too much anxiety to go to school. 3rd grade, my heart is just dying for these kids of where they are at and the experiences that they've been through. So no, there is no initiating. And I think what folks like Adam are doing that's so brilliant is allowing them to initiate the conversation electronically and then bridging the gap to a face-to-face in-person. Through our business, that unfortunately has to happen through Zoom, but we do try to get students on camera as fast as possible to engage the communication. We have so many students that are disengaging from their learning. They've just gone radio silent, and I fear what the supports are across the state within our school system, and the capacity of our systems to support these learners. I'm going to continue to put a plug in for a flexible pathway because this may be where they need to be at this time.
Thank you so much. Mike?
Yeah, I echo a lot of what's been said, I think. So I won't say much, but I've heard people talk about emotional kids working through emotional things, maybe a couple years behind, things like that. And I reflected that last year I definitely hit that with my class and used restorative practices, especially consistently. And they definitely, I saw a huge difference in the kids after that. And so I think I echo the emotional piece that kids have and the benefits of the restorative practices. And I'd also say, I was thinking through this today, we had an engineering project in my class of 15 kids that were here today. 14 out of the 15 were like 100% fully engaged in the project. And I would say that I wouldn't have probably seen that before. And I think it was because they're hungry for that kind of a thing. They've had these things and they had them before, but now that they didn't have them for a while, I think they're kind of hungry for that, like playing with material. They got to build catapults, and like, what kid doesn't want to do that? But like, these kids were trying it and trying it and trying again. I mean, they were really persistent about it. And so I think that that's kind of a plus, that I've seen from that. And I don't remember who goes after me.
Christy, I think. Yep.
Yeah, echoing a lot of what you all have said. I'm thinking about one particular team that I meet with every 2 weeks, and they are students who are in Connecticut. I've never met them in person, And I've also only seen pictures of them that they submitted to me for our like website because they don't turn their cameras on. So it's like, I'm just, that feeling of like, there's still a sense of like, oh, I have this option, so I'm just going to have my camera off. But I've literally never met them. I've never met them in person. So it just adds that one more layer of like difficulty in communicating and sort of connecting. And also seeing just similar just behavior around, how to be, in sixth grade, and seeing behavior that you might have seen from students in fourth grade, kind of popping up in some of our circles. We do a lot of restorative circles, so just sort of seeing that. And then I would say on the faculty side, there's a sense of from some, I don't want to generalize, but like a sense of defeat. I'm also really aware of like our position coming into a school when we're like, hey, we're up for learning and we're here to like, do all these things. And teachers are sort of like, yep, we've been trying that. And, I really am, having been a teacher, I'm so aware of that feeling of someone kind of coming in and trying all these things. And you're sort of saying, yeah, we tried that, it didn't work. So I do feel a little sense of defeat and discouragement from teachers a lot of the time, which is completely understandable after the past couple of years. I think on the positive side, the pandemic has brought up so many issues of equity that are really, you can't not talk about them. So I think there's a sense of like the work around equity has become that much more urgent. And so there is a sort of an opening up where we sort of say like, we have to address these issues. And so I think those issues are coming up so much more in conversation. So they're more honest, authentic conversations from what I'm seeing. Thanks.
Thank you very much, everybody. I hope you'll bear with me. I think just based on sort of where the conversation's going, we just talked about some of the things we've seen in students, and there's some definite themes I'm hearing. One that keeps coming up is this idea of anxiety and social interactions and the need for collaboration. And so in my mind as a classroom teacher, I'm kind of saying to myself, those are things that I need to build in intentionally into my lessons and curriculum. And I guess Christy touched on this a little bit, but the next question, and this, I don't know how long this will go, but this question, and then maybe also what are you hopeful for? But the question I have is, what are you seeing with your peers and how they're dealing with, the last 4 years, if you've been able to work with the same folks over that time? What are you seeing with your peers? But also, what are some of the strategies maybe that you're seeing or that you yourself are doing to kind of deal with the situation that we're in right now? And so again, I'll just kind of give an example. I want to tie back to what Mike was saying. I've really started working a lot with project-based learning. I know that's a kid thing, but having kids work on projects, to me right now, is also reducing some of the behavioral issues in my classroom. And it's also allowing kids to socialize somewhat in unstructured social time, which I think has been really important. And so, as a teacher, I was dealing with a lot of behavior, still have the occasional behavior. And one of the things that I'm kind of turning to is a project-based learning environment where kids can get their hands on stuff and are motivated to do it. And that's a strategy that's sort of helping me weather some of the impacts that I'm experiencing in my classroom. So again, what are you seeing with your colleagues? What strategies are they using? And do you see any positive results? Some of us touched on those already, but again, I think that's important for folks in learning environments to hear what's happening in different communities. Kevin?
Yeah, I think across the board we're seeing more burnout than ever before. I think I had mentioned it earlier. It's just our kids are struggling right now to be empathetic with one another, and on our team, we've historically been grounded in project-based learning and a lot of pretty forward-thinking ways of going about the way that we work with our students. And we lost a lot of our traditions with COVID, with just doing some of our bigger projects and then fun things with kids. And what was nice is like recently we've been able to get back to that. So that's one thing as a team we've been really committing to, both revamping some of our bigger pieces that we do team wide that bring in just more of those soft skills where kids are just playing together and having fun together, and like giving that opportunity for them just to be kids around each other, while still being super purposeful, like within advisory about, thinking about self-awareness and self-control and that whole concept of integrity and impact versus intent. There's been a lot of the conversations that we've had to have more of recently than we've had before. So again, I'm very, very lucky to be on the team I'm on, where we have 4 teachers and a special educator that are very close and we lean on each other. So none of us are really working in a silo, which is huge. School-wide, what's been nice is we're really focused on like what they're calling student stories, to really like think about if you were to write a story about each one of your kids, what's coming up there. And for us, that's connecting right back to our PLP process and really putting a lot of stock and emphasis in, what is the PLP? Why do we have it? And reconnecting with families through like our PLP conferences and student-led conferences, where again, it is that face-to-face in-person meeting with the kids, like taking ownership and celebrating like the great things that they're doing. And it's really nice to have that back as well. And just getting families back into the school, I think it's starting to, hopefully trend back in the right direction, just as a whole community that we're all looking out for each other. Ann?
So one of the promises that I made to teachers for this year is that they would be working on no more than 2 initiatives. And that came out of several years of, needing to be able to teach online and having to do that work and that kind of learning. And watching this ship do this really, really slow turn with the iceberg right in front of it, right? And how do we keep our people, how do we keep people healthy and well, and in a position where they can help others? So part of it has been constructing very carefully put together professional development, where there's always an aspect of choice, and where teachers have more control over their learning. And we've also just started using teacher PLPs as a way of them for tracking their own learning. So they're mimicking what they're asking students to do. And we've now done that for 3 sets of in-service. And it has helped teachers understand the PLP process. So it's, what's good for one group tends to be good for the other as well. We also have, we have 37 new hires this year. And I run both the coaching and mentoring programs, and we don't have enough human beings to help. So we've been stretched really thin, but we've been very fortunate to be fully staffed all the way through. We're occasionally missing a para, but we tend to find people to take those jobs. So some of it has just been, how do we support people to become excellent where they choose to be, and to really think about what excellence is. And some of it has been doing something which took me 30 years of teaching to figure out is good, and that is just to shut up and listen, and to be a thought partner if I'm invited to be, but also just accept whatever it is that needs to kind of be deposited on somebody else. And our teachers this year have taken on, we've adopted EL Open Up Materials. So we have a huge early literacy push. We have a K-12 mathematics push, and then we have PLP work. Everybody's engaged in some kind of SEL or restorative practice that we were doing before. But in terms of official work that you must do, it's really only ever 2 things. And that's bought us some grace.
Hi, I'd say that for the last few years, we've functioned very differently than we had prior to that. In many ways, we've been a glorified daycare center. and our students have treated it that way. They've had a place to come. We've tried to keep things so that they would like to come back. We were trying to have as many students as possible come through the doors, and we fed them, and we tried to entertain them, and we broke them into different small groups and pods, and we tried to have them do a bit of work. But there was so much disruption that it was really challenging to actually complete tasks and to do any formal assessing that had any validity to it. And so I think the last few years, the young people we've been working with haven't seen school the same way we have. There's been an adjustment, and the adults are really the ones that haven't adjusted. The young people saw the world change and changed with it. And we kept saying, well, school's supposed to be this. We got it in our heads. This is what it is. And so now we're trying to get back. And it's a struggle. The adjustments that we make and the adjustments that the young people have already made and the way society looks at the purpose of school, I don't know that we're real intentional right now around explaining the purpose of school, because it has changed a great deal over a very short period of time. It was one thing before COVID, it became something else. And now maybe we're trying to bring it back, or maybe we're trying to make something new. But I don't know that we're being intentional enough in sharing those things with all the stakeholders. And one of the things that we do here is we just try to have each other's back, person to person. It's a struggle. Every day is a struggle to come to work. It's a struggle to deal with the issues that we face. It's a struggle to find daycare for the folks who have children themselves. And so we spend a lot of time just trying to support one another and helping each other out, adult to adult. And when we do that well, things go better. And if we don't do those things well, then that's when absenteeism, adult absenteeism goes up, and when programs kind of fade or change or shift, and there's no consistency. So I know, Don, you asked, what are the adults doing that's working? The thing that's working is us, adult to adult, having relationships that are meaningful, and where we can help each other when we see or when we reach out because we're having issues ourselves. And that then is reflected in what we're able to do with our young people. Competence at the adult level is really a challenge right now. I think no matter how many years you've been teaching, there's a sense that, am I still competent? Everybody's asking that question. Am I able to pull this off? And so we have to be able to talk and be vulnerable about that with one another, and try to work our ways through it. There's not one answer. Well, there goes my lights. There's not one answer for everybody, but that's what I think. If we look out for each other, then the rest of it can have some meaning and we can move forward.
Absolutely. Joe, I've always been a big strategies and protocols person, as you may remember. And I think even more now, we need these strategies, we need these protocols, and maybe we don't even know what we're dealing with. We need new ones that we have to create ourselves. I don't know, to help our young people. And I was thinking that, every year for literally 2 decades, I've come up with a mantra for myself. And I even wrote them. I used to write them up on my door at school when I was teaching 7th and 8th grade. And I have them on my door at Castleton right now. But every year it's a mantra. What can I say to myself to help myself be better? And it started with every day is a new day was the first one. And then, work smarter, not harder. I've come up with things. But the last several years, it's had to do with kindness. And this year, my mantra has been kinder and gentler still. And I tell my students that, kinder and gentler still, because what we are dealing with the 13th year students, the ones right out of high school, is mental health. You know, we've got a lot of mental health issues, and we're doing our best as a campus to, you know, provide mental health supports. But I feel like I need to learn a lot more before I can come up with my strategies and my protocols, you know, that will help. So that's where my mind is in this conversation.
Joe, I got to say, I really liked what you said about competence at the adult level and the need for us to be compassionate with one another, compassionate with ourselves. I think there is a whole lot of self-doubt as maybe school is different and the students have adjusted, but we haven't. So I just thank you for sharing that. I think some of the strategies that are working for us as teachers, I mentioned earlier, the compassion, willingness to meet students where they're at. That's certainly something that I think is critical. And I think we have all really seen the value in the project-based learning and trying to create those opportunities, especially for our our students that don't enjoy school as much or struggle with it. And that's for a lot of teachers, that's a very new, different way of teaching. And so there's a learning curve that comes with that. And some teachers are more comfortable with that than others. And sometimes that, based on the subject matter that you teach. But I think being patient with ourselves as we try to figure out how to be effective in these new modes of teaching is really important, and something that we're doing. We implemented student-led conferences this year, and I know that there was a lot of resistance from both staff and students as we were preparing for that. But on the other end of that was so much knowledge and appreciation and connection and engagement that I know our staff really were kind of blown away by and appreciative of. And I think it's something certainly to build off of as we talk about these social connectedness. Those things are really, really important and valuable. And I also like the way that has re-engaged families, not only just bringing them in school, but engaging with the school in different ways and with their students in different ways too. So those are some of the things that we've been doing that have been successful.
Man, following up on Shane again with very similar themes, like the opportunity is just so rich for healing pedagogies, right? Like ways to reconnect to communities and have communities see schools through an appreciative lens, that grow those bonds that have been lost in the pandemic and fight isolation, build social capital for our students so they see narratives of possibility through this kind of service learning or project-based learning that it's filled with purpose and engagement. And there's research that it helps them with personal growth, right? It helps them shift some of those pieces that is so hard to talk to people and make a phone call or, do an interview. And these skills are inherent in those pedagogies, right? So we have a real chance to build that back. And that sort of walks hand in hand with what Dawn, you were saying, and Anne actually about if we're offering flexibility, humanity, and kindness to students, are we offering the same to teachers, right? Are we offering that same level of flexibility or differentiation for them, maybe in their PD? Is it a compliance culture in classrooms and with teachers, or is it generative? Right? Those are the things like people like to split up like, oh, it's best for students, it's best for teachers. Well, how about just best for humans in a learning community? It makes me think about all those things.
Yeah, a lot of good points coming around before coming to me. Got a lot spinning in my head. But some of the things that are going through my mind right now, it was touched upon with colleagues, the burnout, the being stretched too thin. staffing shortages we're all feeling, and just this level of sort of this absorption of vicarious trauma from like our students and the community. And we've all been through the pandemic ourselves in our own lives, and then too in the jobs that we have, take that on when we come into work. It's really making everybody's body budgets just be maxed out. So then it becomes difficult even when we make explicit intentions to support each other and, you know, be there for each other. There's only so much more support we have to give. Yeah, and it's this reciprocal thing. I want to support others. I need support. Nobody has the body budget left to support me. I don't have much to support others, but the intention is there. And so I feel like sometimes we're looking for these supports that we don't have much left of, but we all are committed to like keeping at it. And I think we're also struggling with balancing things that pull us in two opposite or opposing directions, right? So that concept of meeting students where they're at, which is like just incredibly important and central to any sort of success, versus those of us that really care about like preparing kids for the future. So balancing that with maintaining our high standards and expectations for these kids. And even when we know, okay, they're struggling with their academics or their schoolwork, or just being present in school for very legitimate good reasons, how do we still hold them accountable for those things while also meeting them where they're at, right? How do we balance accountability with empathy? And I think that also transfers back to our work with each other and with supporting our colleagues, right? How do we hold each other accountable while also having empathy and understanding like where we're all at? And so obviously like many of us don't have the answers to any of this. We're all searching for it, but these are just the constant gears that are turning. And I think it's really important and crucial, especially like I find it at the high school level, having these same conversations with our students, because again, they're joining the adult world with us, and they're going to be struggling with these same balance issues, and they might not have the same support structures and tools in place to navigate it the way we do.
Sorry, I think I broke up the list of how it was going, but I'll stay on track. I will tell you, at the K-8 level, this is the first year that we're running a K-8 educational platform. The teachers that are on board, they came, I think, at their weakest, and now we're able to see them at their strongest. So please know I am coming to this meeting now with a ton of guilt that I work with some amazing and outstanding educators who've removed themselves from, at the K-8 level from the building, and they're thriving and providing so much to our students and meeting them where they're at. Juxtaposed to that is at the high school level, where we have our online educators who are in the building, and I'm meeting with them regularly. They are stretched so thin, they continue. I don't know whether they just want to tell me to, keep things going, but how VTVLC can be a bright spot in their day, because, the kids that are coming there are kind of wanting to be there and are engaging. But they're also communicating about the disengagement and how to reach students when they completely disengage, and it's happening so often. And none of us have a great answer. Our student support team, I facilitated a whole day meeting with them just to see what can we do to change our practice as we start a new semester. And I felt like we were circling the horses and we were on a hamster wheel, because we've continued to try everything and we still aren't getting in front of them. Obviously picking up the phone, short of driving to their houses. And I think a few of them, I'm only holding them back. Probably I'm not holding them back. They're probably secretly going to houses just to make face-to-face with these students. So it is a very challenging time to find balance and give grace to everyone.
Is it me now? I'm not sure what order. Is it? Okay, great. Yeah, I won't say much, but I just echo what folks have said. And I think perhaps Monica mentioned having kind of mantras. And I think the best mantra that I got once was that we know better than the children, maybe a little more experienced and maybe knowledgeable in some ways, but definitely know better than the children. And so I try to think of that when I do get frustrated or with other adults, or I go down the path of negativity or something, and I try to remember that people are doing the best they can do at that time. And so assuming good intentions, I'm thinking more in leadership, like with Monica's class and such, how I can help other colleagues and all, and that's a really important thing for me to remember, I think. Is that assuming good intentions from folks, especially at first impression, like seeing something or hearing something that might be surprising. It's important to have them help you understand like their perspective and such. So.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I'll echo that. And just thinking about just on our team of up facilitators, we have once a week a team meeting once a week. We always start with a check-in question. So we really want to practice what we are doing in schools with our team. And so always having a check-in question, expressing appreciation for each other. Because we work remotely, we try to schedule one-on-one meetings with each other throughout the week, even if there's no pressing business to talk about, but just to connect and maybe talk about what's going on in your life. Leaving time for that, I think, is just so important. And then when we go into schools and working with adults in the schools, just, bringing that grace, bringing that empathy, listening, bringing humility, knowing that I don't know everything about the school, and I never will, but I can learn so much from the teachers I'm working with, and then recalibrating if what we're bringing to the school is not what's needed, and really responding to the needs of the youth and the adults in the room. So just being very ready to change up the agenda kind of at a moment's notice, which, having come from a teaching background, it is helpful to, know that happens very often. You have to think on your feet and change things. So just a lot of humility and grace, I think, right now.
I want to thank everybody for their comments this afternoon. And at the beginning of the webinar, somebody asked if this would be recorded, and I said it would, and it would go to the Middle Grades Collaborative's YouTube channel. And I think I'm going to have to watch this one again, just because there's so many important themes and ideas. And what really strikes me is that in your commitment to education, just by participating this afternoon, you've demonstrated the kind of leadership that our schools and our kids and our colleagues really need. And I would encourage you to continue with that leadership, continue with this way of thinking. And Adam mentioned all these things going on, and we all have so many different things that are going on. But if we can demonstrate the poise and the empathy and the leadership that our schools and communities need, I think that we'll see improvement. Again, just really want to thank everybody for their contributions and their thinking. We have, I do want to just remind people that this Saturday at UVM is the Middle Grades Conference from 9 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That's another great way to connect with other educators. We have another middle grades conversation happening on Thursday, February 16th at the same time. Everybody's always invited to join us. And what I'd like to do in closing is I would just like people to write in the chat a word of hope or a thanks, just in thinking about closing. And I hope everybody also gets, I don't know if snow has started in your part of the state, but I hope everybody gets home, is safe and sound for the evening. And again, thank you so much for all your contributions. We deeply appreciate it. And have a great evening, and thanks for participating. One word of hope or optimism or something you recommend for others, and we'll see you sometime in the future. Thank you so much, everybody.